They say curiosity killed the cat. But what if curiosity opens a door that was never meant to be touched? Welcome to the shadows you try to ignore. In today's tale, we step beyond horror into something far older and darker. This isn't just a ghost story. This is black magic, ancient rituals, forbidden symbols, and whispers that never fade. Once the curse is cast, there's no going back. Are you ready to uncover what should have stayed buried? Then turn off the lights and let the darkness in. My wife Emily and I had been looking forward to this weekend for months. We both work long hours in Boston, and with our 8-year-old daughter Sophie, we really needed a break. So we rented a small cabin by a lake in the mountains, hoping to get away from all the noise and stress. The drive up was longer than I expected. The road got narrower and more winding the farther we went. Sophie spent most of the trip looking out the window, pointing at cows in fields and counting red barns. Emily was quiet but smiling, happy to finally be somewhere peaceful. When we arrived, the cabin was even better than the pictures. It was a cozy wooden house with a porch that looked out over a calm lake. The forest surrounded us on 3 sides. It felt like we were truly alone. After we unpacked, Sophie ran upstairs to explore. Emily and I sat on the porch, listening to the birds and feeling the cool breeze. The next morning we planned to visit the forest ranger's cabin nearby. We heard he took care of injured animals, and Sophie was excited to meet him. The morning was clear and cool. After breakfast, we packed some snacks and started walking toward the ranger's cabin. Sophie ran ahead, picking up pretty leaves and pine cones along the way. Emily and I walked slowly, enjoying the quiet sounds of the forest. When we reached the cabin, an older man with kind eyes came out to meet us. He introduced himself as Mr. Caldwell and told Sophie he was caring for a baby owl with a broken wing. Sophie's face lit up. She loves animals. He invited us inside. The cabin smelled like wood and medicine. Sophie carefully looked at the small owl resting in a soft crate. It blinked sleepily at her. Emily smiled, and I felt myself relaxing. This was exactly the kind of peaceful trip we wanted. After visiting the owl, we thanked Mr. Caldwell and started back to the cabin. Sophie stayed close, still chatting about the baby owl and asking when we could come back. The sun was higher now, warming the forest floor, and everything felt calm. Back at the cabin, Emily and I began unpacking the car while Sophie played outside on the porch. She was collecting sticks and arranging them in patterns on the picnic table. I kept an eye on her through the kitchen window, feeling content. But after a few minutes, I realized Sophie wasn't on the porch anymore. I looked out, but all I saw was empty space. "Emily, where's Sophie?" I called. Emily came over, wiping her hands on a towel. "She was just here a second ago," she said, a little worried. We stepped outside and started calling Sophie's name. At first, we thought she might have wandered just a little ways, maybe down near the water or by the fire pit, but she wasn't anywhere we could see. I took a deep breath, trying to keep calm. The woods around us looked peaceful, but suddenly the quiet felt too heavy. "Let's check around the cabin," I said, already moving toward the side where there was a small shed. Emily followed, her voice growing tighter as she called Sophie's name again. We scanned the ground, looking for footprints or signs she'd been nearby. Then I spotted something, a narrow trail, almost hidden between 2 tall oak trees. The dirt looked freshly disturbed, and I could see tiny footprints leading into the forest. "Emily, look," I said, pointing. She frowned but nodded. "Should we follow it?" Before she could answer, I was already stepping onto the path, calling Sophie as I went. The trees closed in overhead, turning the afternoon sunlight into soft green shadows. My heart hammered as I moved deeper, trying to stay calm for Sophie's sake. After a few minutes, I heard a voice. It was Sophie, clear and high-pitched. "Daddy!" Relief and fear hit me at once. I pushed through the bushes ahead, and there she was, standing next to an old, rusty RV. It looked abandoned, covered in moss and dirt, the windows dark and taped over. But what made my skin crawl was the man standing beside her. He was middle-aged, with a sunburned face and a faded vest covered in patches. His smile was wide, but something about it felt wrong. His hand rested on Sophie's shoulder, gripping her lightly. "Daddy." Sophie waved happily. I forced myself to step forward. "Sophie, we've been looking everywhere for you. You can't wander off like that." The man, Bradley, as he said his name was, turned to me with a crooked smile. Found her near the old logging road. Dangerous out here for kids. Bears, coyotes, all sorts of predators. His voice was rough, like he'd smoked for years. I ignored his outstretched hand and pulled Sophie close. Bradley stepped a little closer, blocking the narrow path back to the cabin. His smile stayed fixed, but his eyes were cold. "She was just about to see the baby raccoons," he said. "I take care of hurt animals, you know." I glanced toward the RV. The door hung open slightly, revealing only darkness inside. A strange chemical smell drifted out, mixed with something sour and old. "Thanks, but we need to go," I said firmly, tightening my grip on Sophie's hand. Bradley's fingers twitched. That's when I noticed his fingernails, long, yellowed, and caked with dirt, and a padlock hung loosely on the outside of the RV door. Why lock an animal rescue vehicle from the outside? Before I could say more, Sophie tugged at my sleeve. "Daddy, Mr. Bradley showed me inside," she said, her voice small but steady. "There weren't any animals, just a mattress with straps and pictures on the walls." My heart stopped. I looked back at Bradley, who suddenly looked less like a friendly ranger and more like a threat. "What kind of pictures?" I asked, voice low. Sophie blinked, thinking. Kids, like me. Some were crying. Bradley's face hardened. His smile disappeared, replaced by something cold and sharp. His hand moved slowly toward his vest pocket. "Let's go," I said, lifting Sophie up into my arms. The man's eyes darted between us, filled with something dangerous. Then I heard Emily's voice, closer than I expected. "Sophie! Mark!" Bradley's hand froze halfway, and panic flickered across his face. "You should leave," he said, stepping aside with a forced smile. "Don't want to upset the missus." We didn't wait. I ran through the trees, branches scratching my arms. Sophie pressed tight against me. When we burst out of the forest, Emily was there, phone in hand, looking terrified, but relieved. The next hour was a blur. Emily calling the police, me trying to explain what had happened while keeping Sophie calm. 2 Vermont state troopers arrived quickly. They took our statements seriously, their expressions grim, as I led them back to where Bradley's RV had been. But it was gone. Only tire tracks and the lingering chemical smell remained. One of the officers, a young woman named Kowalski, knelt beside Sophie and gently asked her to describe everything. My brave girl remembered things I hadn't. The zip ties, the ropes, air fresheners hanging everywhere, and a box of children's clothes. The photographs Sophie saw weren't just pictures. Some showed kids at playgrounds and schools, taken from far away, like someone was watching them secretly. Days later, back in Boston, Officer Kowalski called with news. The man I'd met as Bradley was really Theodore Hutchkins, a wanted criminal in multiple states for attempted child abduction and luring. He'd used many fake identities, from soccer coach to wildlife rehab worker, to get close to families. The abandoned RV was found near the Canadian border. DNA from several children was inside, but luckily all were safe and returned to their families. Hutchkins himself was caught trying to cross into Quebec weeks later. They found fake IDs, children's toys, and journals describing his plans. Our cabin was on his list. He'd been watching rental homes where families like ours stayed. Sometimes when I lie awake at night, I think about what could have happened. If Sophie hadn't told me what she saw, if Emily hadn't called when she did, if I hadn't followed that hidden trail. I still feel the cold sweat, the sharp fear. But I'm grateful we escaped, and that my daughter is safe. We'll never forget that weekend at Silent Pines. We weren't supposed to bring our phones. That was the whole point of this trip. Digital detox in the Oregon wild, some curated experience Mason found online after my 3rd sponsored post in a day made him call me a dopamine junkie. "We need to unplug," he said. "Just for a weekend. You'll survive without your followers watching you eat pine cones." So we drove. Miles and miles into damp green silence, the kind of wilderness where the trees huddle too close and the air smells like moss and thyme. Somewhere past hour 4, the GPS froze, blue dot spinning. Mason tapped the screen, then smacked it. No signal. "We missed the last turn," I said. "Didn't it say to take Forest Route 9B? Mason squinted at the paper map. Bless him for printing one like it was 1998. But the roads out here were spaghetti, and none of them matched up. That's when we saw the sign. "The Pines welcome you," carved into old wood, dangling crookedly from a mossy post. Below it, Vacancy. Must be the place, Mason said, too relieved to question it. We turned down the gravel path. The forest swallowed us whole. The lodge looked like a postcard someone forgot to send. Rustic, log cabin style. Candlelight flickered in the windows, even though it was barely past 4. The front door opened before we knocked. A woman stood there, pale, smiling. Not a word. "Hi," I said. "We're probably lost." "Are you the retreat?" She just nodded and stepped aside. Inside smelled like cedar and something sweet. Lavender, maybe. Everything was dim and warm. A fire crackled in the hearth. Mason gave me a look. "See? Told you this would be good for us." The silent woman handed us a guest book. I signed, fingers twitching with the urge to check my notifications. Mason caught me. "No phones," he whispered, mock scolding. Then the woman handed our phones back. Not in a basket, not locked up, just handed them over. "You'll want to keep them," she said. Her voice was soft, like an echo trying to be a person. Our room was nice. Too nice. Rustic like the rest of the lodge, with a big 4-poster bed, fur throws, and antique lamps that clicked when you turned them on. A huge window looked out into the trees, but there were no curtains, which felt weird, like the forest could just stand there and watch us. Mason sprawled on the bed and let out a long, satisfied groan. God, this place is perfect. No work emails, no TikTok, no doom scrolling. Just us and trees. I smiled and nodded, even as I instinctively reached for my phone. Old reflexes die hard. I didn't mean to unlock it. I just did. My thumb knew the code before my brain caught up. The screen flickered. Then something off. It wasn't the lock screen anymore. It was a video, a live stream, of us, lying in bed, right now. I blinked. The video showed Mason flopped on the mattress, and me, still standing near the window, looking down at my phone. I turned toward the wall where the angle seemed to come from, but there was nothing. No camera, no lens, just wooden paneling and a mounted set of antlers. "What the hell?" I muttered. Mason sat up. "What?" I showed him the phone. "Look, it's live." He stared. "Is this a prank?" He took my phone and turned in place, lining up the angle. "No camera," he said, frowning. "It's exactly our room, though. From, like, here. That's not possible." I didn't open it. It was just playing, like it wanted me to see it. Mason checked the app drawer. No live streaming apps, no notifications. Maybe it's cached from earlier or something. "But we never filmed this," I said. "It's us, right now." He laughed nervously. "Okay, this place is weird. But hey, maybe it's like an immersive game thing. A creepy vibe, you know. Techie horror. The retreat's idea of fun. It didn't feel like fun." I closed the stream, restarted the phone. The moment the screen lit up again, the same video popped up. Same angle. Same us. Now, though, the timestamp in the corner said, "Live, 1:12. It was still going. I barely slept. Mason passed out almost instantly, but I lay there staring at the ceiling, watching the trees blur outside the window. Something about them looked wrong, like they were leaning in. At some point, I must have dozed off. When I woke, it was to the dim gray light of morning and the soft buzz of my phone. Notification. I'd lost a follower overnight. No big deal. Happens all the time. Except, I couldn't remember who it was. I scrolled through old comments, DMs. Nothing felt missing. Just this blank space like someone had been erased not just from my phone, but from my head. I stared at the screen for a long time, feeling cold. Then Mason's voice behind me. "Hey babe, you okay?" "Yeah," I lied. "Just tired." The staff were always there, but somehow never around. We'd leave the room and find the dining room already set with breakfast. Oatmeal, toast, some kind of wild berry jam that stained your fingers purple. No one ever spoke. They moved like ghosts, drifting through the lodge in uniforms that didn't quite fit, eyes that didn't quite focus. "Okay," Mason said between bites. "Admit it. This place is kinda cool." I just nodded, but I didn't eat, because the second I opened my phone that morning, the live stream was still there. Same room, same bed. Only now, the feed had switched angles, closer to the bed, like the camera had moved during the night, like it had crept forward while we slept. I didn't tell Mason, not this time. Instead, I checked my socials again. I'd lost another follower, and just like before, I couldn't remember who. There was a gap, a photo with comments that didn't add up, threads where someone should have replied but didn't, a friendship-shaped hole that made my skin crawl. "Do you ever feel like you're forgetting something?" I asked him later as we walked through the trees. "All the time," he said. "That's why I need this break." "No, I mean, like someone you knew, and now they're just gone. Not ghosted, like gone. He looked at me sideways. "Like dead?" "No, like they never existed." Mason raised an eyebrow. "You're spending too much time on your phone during a digital detox." He was teasing, but something in his voice cracked. Tired, edgy. I almost said it. "Check your followers." But I didn't. Because what if his count was lower too? What if it was happening to both of us? That night, I didn't check the stream. I turned my phone off completely and shoved it under a pillow. But that didn't help, because I dreamed about it instead. Dreamed about a cold, blinking red light in the corner of the room. About someone crawling along the floorboards with a camera where their face should be. About voices whispering usernames over and over like a prayer. When I woke, I was sweating. My phone was on the nightstand, unlocked. The live stream was playing, closer now, right beside the bed. I walked into the bathroom and turned on the faucet just to hear noise. My reflection looked dull, washed out. My hair, limp. My skin, pixelated? No, just tired. That was all. Sleep-deprived paranoia. I went to splash water on my face and saw the Wi-Fi network pop up on my phone, even though we were miles from anywhere. Only one network. Harvest guest. No password. No signal bars. Just one bar blinking, like a lifeline. I couldn't stop thinking about the network name. Harvest guest. It felt deliberate, not the default junk you see on routers. I connected to it, just to see, and instantly my phone unlocked. No login screen. Just one tab open in the browser. "Welcome, Lena. Your presence is valuable." I almost dropped the phone. The screen flickered, then displayed a menu. Live feeds, engagement metrics, influencer archive, recycle bin. I tapped influencer archive. My name was there. So was Mason's. Next to mine, value score, 89.6%. Next to Mason's, value score, 51.2%. Underneath, it read, status, ongoing harvest. "What the hell is this?" I whispered. I clicked my name. A full dossier loaded. Photos from years ago, deleted posts. Old DMs, sponsored content. Follower growth charts, engagement heat maps, facial scans, audio logs, everything I'd ever given to the internet. Collected, sorted, labeled like a specimen in a jar. I scrolled faster. At the bottom, memory sync in progress. Estimated completion, 2 days. My mouth went dry. "Lena?" I jumped. Mason stood in the doorway, his eyes puffy and red. "You okay?" he asked. His voice cracked, tired, slurred. "Yeah," I said too quickly. I tilted the phone away, just trying to check directions. Mason rubbed his temples. "I keep forgetting stuff." I stared at him. "Like what?" He blinked slowly. "How we got here, or your middle name, or the way your laugh used to sound. Isn't that crazy?" I didn't laugh. I took his hand. It felt cold. Later, I snuck into the main hallway and followed the blinking router signal to a locked wooden door. The staff always avoided this hallway. I'd never seen them go near it. I jimmied it open with a butter knife from breakfast. Behind the door, stairs, leading down. I descended slowly, phone flashlight guiding the way. The air got colder, thicker. At the bottom, a concrete bunker. Rows of servers hummed in the dark. Every wall was covered in screens, each one showing different live streams. Bedrooms, guests, some crying, some staring blankly, some empty. One screen showed me, standing in front of the screens, looking horrified. I turned. There was no camera, only a black glass orb suspended from the ceiling. Watching, feeding. One screen was labeled recycle bin. I tapped it. I saw faces, dozens, all smiling, posed. Glamorous, perfect people, now flickering, fragmented. Their usernames were faded, their metrics zeroed out. Underneath, it said, retired, memory deleted. The lodge wasn't feeding us breakfast. It was feeding on us, on the parts of ourselves we'd given away so freely. When I got back upstairs, Mason was curled up on the bed, whispering nonsense to himself. I sat next to him. He didn't look up. On his phone screen, I saw it. The live stream. It was no longer from our room. It was from inside his head. I tried to pull Mason off the bed. He didn't resist, but he didn't help either. Just stared blankly ahead, lips moving without sound. I looked into his eyes and saw something missing, like he was being unspooled from the inside out. "Mason," I whispered. "Stay with me." His pupils flickered. No, glitched, like corrupted pixels in a low-res video. I grabbed both phones, stuffed them in my coat pocket, and hauled him upright. His legs barely worked. He staggered like a sleepwalker. The halls were silent. No staff, no guests. I didn't even hear the forest anymore. Just the low electronic hum of the lodge breathing. The front door didn't open. I shoved, kicked, screamed. Nothing. Then both phones buzzed at once. Mason's lock screen lit up. Harvest complete. Mine showed a countdown. 15%. Uploading. I smashed his phone on the floor. It screamed, not like a device, but like a person. A short, sharp wail that cut off instantly. Mason collapsed. I backed away. My phone still showed the live stream, but I wasn't in it anymore. Only Mason. Still, eyes open. I ran. Through the halls, past the kitchen, past the fire, now cold, down corridors that didn't exist before. Every window showed the same thing. Us, in our room, still sleeping, looping endlessly. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Behind me. I turned. No one. But the shadows. They weren't right. They lagged, like bad motion capture. I saw my own silhouette glitch, stutter, then catch up. I was losing definition. I made it back to the basement, to the servers. One last shot. I ripped open a metal panel and started yanking wires. Sparks flew. The lights flickered. The screen showing my stream went black. I smiled. For a second. Then I heard the voice. Faint, metallic, from inside the walls. "Welcome, Lena. Your identity has been preserved." I woke up in bed. Room tidy. No sign of Mason. My phone was gone. My head felt light, hollow. I couldn't remember what day it was, or where I lived, or what I'd done before we arrived. But when I looked in the mirror, I still looked like me. Kind of. Just smoother. A little less. Like someone had dialed back the resolution. The bell above the lodge door rang. I stepped into the lobby. A new couple was checking in. Young, stylish, phones in hand. The woman at the desk smiled and gestured silently toward the guest book. The new guests didn't seem to notice me. But I noticed something. Their phones were already recording, streaming, the red light blinking softly in their coat pockets. In my hand, I found a phone. Not mine, but it opened with my thumbprint. The screen flickered once. A notification. Live. 00001. The Pines welcomes you. And just like that, I smiled. I hadn't planned on seeing Jesse Nolan again. Not after all these years, and certainly not at the Belwick High reunion, which I only attended because guilt and wine made for a persuasive combination. But there he was. Same easy smile. Same ridiculous leather jacket. Like time hadn't dared touch him. We hugged in that weird, too long, too short way people do when they don't know where they stand anymore. We made small talk, the kind filled with, "Do you remember when?" and awkward silences. And then, just as I was about to say goodbye and retreat to my hotel room with a bottle of Merlot, the music stopped. Someone yelled from the gym doors, "The carnival's here!" I felt it before I saw it. That cold, clenching feeling in my stomach, like the wind had shifted inside me. Carnival Veritas. I hadn't heard that name in over 20 years. Not since I was 9 and watched a boy vanish behind a carousel, never to be found. "It's back," Jesse said beside me. He was smiling, but his voice was tight. "You remember it too, don't you?" I nodded. Of course I did. It came only once every 10 years. Always unannounced. Always on the same spot. That overgrown field behind Marrow Creek. No advertisements. No trucks rolling in. It just appeared. We looked at each other, silently daring the other to say it. "You want to go?" Jesse asked. I didn't want to, but I said yes anyway. The field was lit like a postcard from a dream. Ferris wheels spinning slowly, cotton candy stands glowing neon pink, the scent of popcorn, cinnamon, and ozone in the air. The whole place pulsed like a heartbeat, and yet, something about it felt off. Too still, too symmetrical. like a memory you know was altered. No ticket booth, no entry gates. We just walked in. The crowd was thin, quiet. Families moved through the foggy paths like ghosts, barely talking, their eyes distant. A carousel spun with no music. The painted horses moved slower than they should have, like they were resisting. "Déjà vu," Jesse said, looking around. I didn't answer. My chest was tight. The longer we stayed, the more I felt like I was being watched. Then we saw the fortune teller's tent. It hadn't changed. Red velvet flaps, gold tassels, that same star symbol stitched into the cloth. A warm light flickered inside. Without thinking, we ducked in. Inside, incense stung my nose. Candlelight danced across hundreds of mirrors, all cracked just slightly. And then she appeared. Madame Zora. She didn't walk in. She was just suddenly there, seated behind a crystal bowl. Eyes like tarnished silver, hair wound into an impossible black braid that coiled like a snake. "You've come back," she said, not a question. "We were just looking for something," she interrupted. "You all are." Jesse let out a breathy laugh. "Right. Let me guess. You're going to tell us our future?" "No," she said, leaning in. "I'm going to warn you." We froze. "This place," she whispered, "isn't a carnival. It's a cage, a clock, a curse." I wanted to leave, but my legs wouldn't move. The Carnival Veritas was born of betrayal. It runs on stories that never end. Time here loops, bends, breaks. Once you enter, you stay, until the carnival decides you're ready to leave. Jessie tried to speak, but she raised a hand. "You are already part of it. Both of you. One by guilt, one by blood." "Okay, we're done," I said, grabbing Jessie's arm. "This is too much." Madame Zora didn't follow us out, but her last words clung to my skin like frostbite. "If you want to escape, find the ghost in the mirror." We didn't talk for a while after that. Just walked, pretending to enjoy ourselves. But the unease grew. By midnight, the crowd had thinned to almost nothing. The lights flickered. The rides creaked in silence. And then, people started disappearing. A child ahead of us ran toward a cotton candy stall and never came out the other side. A man stepped into a funhouse mirror room, and when we peeked inside just seconds later, it was empty. No screams, no signs of struggle, just gone. "We have to go," I said. We turned toward the exit, but there was nothing behind us but fog. The trees were gone. The field was gone. The path behind us had vanished. That's when Jessie stopped and pointed to a sign. "Hall of Whispers. Secrets never die." A new tent, one that hadn't been there earlier. Drawn like moths to flame, we entered. Inside the Hall of Whispers, the walls were lined with sepia-toned photographs, old carnival acts, sword swallowers, fire breathers, contortionists. Each photo had a name and a date, all from the 1920s. A soft wind hissed through the tent, carrying voices too faint to make out. But one photo caught my attention immediately. Celeste Noir, the nightingale of the air, died July 17th, 1925. She was stunning. Alabaster skin, eyes rimmed in kohl, frozen mid-swing on a trapeze. There was something haunted in her expression, like she already knew what would happen next. Beneath her portrait, someone had scratched into the wood. The fire was no accident. Jessie read it out loud and frowned. "What fire?" That's when we heard it. Music from a calliope playing a fractured dissonant waltz. It was coming from a back room in the tent, where a small wooden chest sat atop a cracked table. Inside the chest was a journal. The leather binding was brittle, the pages yellowed. Jessie opened it and read aloud. July 16th, 1925. She found out. I tried to stop her, but she screamed. Said she'd expose us all. Said she'd burn it down before letting me have the final bow. I never meant for her to fall. His voice cracked. "It's signed, A.V. Alaric Voss," I said. The name had been everywhere in the old posters. Ringmaster, owner, visionary. Also, Celeste's lover. More pieces fell into place than I was ready for. "That woman," I said. "Celeste. She was betrayed, died in a fire. And now, she's the one keeping this place trapped." "Why?" Jessie asked. I turned back to her photo. Because he blamed her for it, and no one ever told her story. Back outside, the carnival was quieter. The silence had weight now. Oppressive, suffocating. We saw Madame Zora again, standing beneath the carousel. She knows you're close, she said. She's been watching you. Celeste, I said. Madame Zora nodded. She doesn't want to be freed. She wants to be understood. Her grief built this place. And the others? Jessie asked. The missing people? They become part of the carnival. Forever. Her eyes flicked to me. Unless someone finishes her story, tells the truth. She handed me something, a cracked locket. Inside was a photo of Celeste and Alaric, arms around each other, smiling like the world hadn't yet burned. You'll find her, Madame Zora whispered, where mirrors never lie. And then she vanished, literally. One moment she was there, the next, gone in a flicker of sparks. We found the mirror maze near the edge of the grounds. It looked normal enough, thin glass panes, blinking lights, but the second we stepped in, I knew it wasn't. The mirrors didn't show our reflections. They showed versions of us. One, Lena, was screaming. One was younger, crying. One was older, face hollow, eyes wild, muttering something on a loop I couldn't hear. Jesse walked ahead, then stopped. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Jesse? I stepped closer. What do you see? He turned, and I froze. His eyes were glowing faint gold. His posture shifted, back straight, chin high. And when he spoke, it wasn't Jesse's voice anymore. You left me in the fire, Celeste. I stumbled back. Jesse? No, the thing said, stepping toward me. Alaric Voss. My blood turned to ice. I tried to make it right. I tried to stop her, but she threatened everything. The mirrors pulsed, warping the space around us. A low wind howled. She died because of you, I said. He paused. No, he whispered. Because of me. And then a new reflection appeared. Not me, not Jesse, but Celeste, stepping from the mirror like it was water. Her gown burned at the edges, eyes full of storm and sorrow. You lied, she said, staring at Jesse, or Alaric. I know, he said, his voice breaking. I failed you. The fire began around us, flames dancing across the mirrored floor. Celeste stepped forward. This is your penance. No, I yelled, stepping between them. This isn't justice. It's a cage. She looked at me then, eyes hollow. You deserve the truth, Celeste, I said, holding out the journal. He wrote it. He knew he was wrong. She reached out, fingers grazing the pages, and as she read, something in her shifted. Her expression collapsed from rage to something worse. Sorrow. I waited so long, she whispered. Too long. And then she let go. Of the journal. Of the carnival. Of everything. The fire went out. The mirrors shattered. I woke up lying in the grass outside Marrow Creek. Morning light stung my eyes. Birds chirped like nothing had happened. The field was empty. No tents. No Ferris wheel. No music. No Jesse. I searched for hours. Called his name until my voice cracked. No one had seen him. No one remembered the carnival. The reunion had ended early, they said. A power outage. Everyone went home. Only I remembered. A week later, I stopped at a gas station just outside Indianapolis. The kind with old flyers pinned to a corkboard near the bathrooms. One caught my eye. Carnival Veritas. One night only. July 17th. Fog Creek, Ohio. The photo was old. Faded. But behind the tent, just barely visible, Jesse, wearing a top hat, a long red coat, smiling, like the carnival had claimed him. And maybe it had. But I know one thing. The story's not over. Not until someone finishes it. They say honeymoons are about intimacy, escape, beginnings. Ours began with crampons, oxygen cans, and the unforgiving silence of Alaskan ice. I had always been the adventurer. Mia, my wife, followed me out of love, or recklessness. She smiled even as the winds bit our faces and the guide warned us, no rescue if the weather flips. There were 6 of us. Me, Mia, the guide, Jonas, a college geology professor named Lena, a quiet couple from Oregon, and an ex-military survivalist named Ty. We were tethered together by rope and shared thrill. The glacier stretched endless before us, pure white, cracked by ancient veins of blue. Every footstep crunched with the sound of trespass. It happened so fast. 1 second, Lena was joking about ice samples. The next, she screamed and vanished. The rope snapped tight and hissed. We scrambled to halt her fall, ice axes digging desperately. But she was gone, swallowed by a crevasse none of us had noticed. hidden like a mouth waiting to feed. Jonas barked orders. We secured ropes and lights. Time was everything. If she was still alive down there, the cold would kill her faster than the fall. "I'm going down," I said before anyone else. Mia gripped my hand. "I'm going too." Jonas didn't argue. We descended together, the light above shrinking into a distant pinprick as we lowered ourselves into the bowels of the glacier. It was deeper than it should have been. Far deeper. We found her, Lena, about 150 feet down, on a ledge, unconscious, but breathing, her face pale, almost glowing in the ice-blue light. But that wasn't the only thing we found. Behind her was something impossible. Stone, not rock, carved stone, ancient. A curved wall partially embedded in the ice, covered in swirling patterns, and a massive circular door with no hinges. Pillars flanked it, etched with symbols that shimmered faintly under our headlamps. "What the hell?" Mia whispered. Jonas's breath fogged in the suddenly warmer air. "This wasn't in the satellite maps. None of this." Lena stirred. Her lips moved. "It's watching." We thought she was delirious, until we heard breathing. It echoed deep in the glacier, low and steady, like an animal asleep in a cave. Only this one was massive and close. We pulled Lena up gently. She was feverish. Her eyes kept drifting toward the door. "Don't speak. It listens." I looked around. The ice was changing. What looked like veins pulsed under the surface. The frost itself twitched. Mia touched one of the symbols. "It's warm," she said. The silence around us changed. It wasn't silence anymore. It had shape. Then Ty's voice came from above. "We're coming down. Stay put." But Jonas turned pale. No, they shouldn't. By the time Ty and the others reached us, the door had begun breathing. There's no better word for it. It contracted and expanded slowly, the symbols glowing in rhythm like a heartbeat. "It's a containment," Lena murmured. "Not a ruin, a prison." I backed away. "We need to go, now." But the glacier shifted. It moved, not from above, but from inside. Mia grabbed my arm. Her eyes were wide. "Did you feel that?" Jonas dropped his gear and ran toward the rope. "Out! Everyone out!" Then the door opened. Just a crack. A hiss of air escaped, so cold it burned our faces. Mist curled out like fingers. From the mist came a shape. Just a flicker. Not a creature. Not a person. A presence. It touched your thoughts, rearranged them. Ty screamed. Then he was gone. Mia moved toward the door like she was sleepwalking. "Mia!" I shouted, but she didn't hear. Her lips moved with the symbols. Lena tried to stop her. Too late. Mia stepped into the mist. Her skin turned pale, eyes distant. "It showed me," she whispered. "What it was. Before." She turned to me slowly. It wasn't buried. It grew the glacier around itself. A cocoon. We broke it. The mist darkened. The breathing was no longer subtle. It rumbled. Jonas grabbed Lena and started climbing. The Oregon couple were already scrambling. But I couldn't leave Mia. I ran into the mist. Inside, it was death and memory. My past and future flashed in alien symbols. I saw ice forming over civilizations, people screaming in tongues, a being slithering through time, sleeping beneath our feet for millennia. It was never a glacier. It was skin, a shell, and now it was waking up. Mia stood at the center, unmoving. The thing hovered behind her. No shape, just weight, eyes without form. "You're not her," I said. Her eyes twitched. "It remembers us." I grabbed her and screamed her name, again and again. She blinked. "Jason!" We ran. The climb out was chaos. The walls collapsed inward. The symbols glowed brighter, then cracked like eggshells. We made it out, barely, to the surface. Jonas, Lena, the Oregon couple. We were 5 now. The wind above was screaming. The glacier had changed. Behind us, the crevasse sealed like a wound. For hours, we waited for rescue in stunned silence. Eventually, a chopper came. We said Lena slipped and we all fell. No one believed us. But they didn't press. That was 3 months ago. Mia still wakes up with frost on her lips. I see symbols on windows, traced in condensation. Sometimes the mirror fogs, and I see a shape behind me. The whispers haven't stopped, and in my dreams, the glacier is breathing again, waiting. They told me not to stay overnight. A wrinkled woman behind the counter at the pub in Kinlochbervie shook her head when I mentioned the old lighthouse. "That place isn't for pictures," she said. "It's for things that don't have names." I smiled politely. I'd heard a lot of local superstitions in my time, chasing the auroras around the world with my camera. But this place, it felt untouched. The sky was clear, the solar storms strong. I wanted the perfect shot of the northern lights with the sea in the foreground, nothing but nature and isolation. So I ignored the warnings and took the long path up to the lighthouse. It stood like a sentinel over the cliffs, ancient, gray, and battered by salt. The glass in the lantern room was cracked, but the spiral staircase held, and the stone walls felt solid despite the whine of the wind. Inside, dust layered the rooms. An old cot, a wood stove, sea charts curling at the edges. I set up my gear, took a few test shots, and noticed a drawer wedged shut beneath a rusted desk. It took some effort, but it finally gave with a groan. Inside, a leather-bound book with T. McLeay etched faintly into the cover. I didn't open it until the sun went down. The first entries were mundane: weather patterns, ship sightings, requests for supply drops. Then, slowly, they changed. March 12th, 1972. Heard the melody again. Thought it was the wind at first, but it's low, familiar. March 20th. The light turns on by itself now, and I swear it moves when I sleep. April 3rd. There's something under the sea. I've seen its eyes when the light hits just right. The beacon isn't a warning. It's a summons. I stopped reading. Outside, my cameras were capturing green ribbons of aurora, but further out at sea was another light, pulsing, deep underwater. Not a ship, too symmetrical, like an eye blinking in rhythm. And then I heard it, a note, faint, carried on the wind like a lullaby and a cry layered together. The lighthouse light turned on. I had checked it earlier. It was disconnected, the old generator corroded beyond function. But now, the beam swept slowly across the ocean, illuminating the fog. It glowed a sickly white, humming faintly, in sync with the sound I now couldn't unhear. I backed away from the lens room, heart hammering. For a second, just a second, I thought I saw a shadow move far out at sea, something rising. I didn't sleep. I read more of the diary instead. April 9th. I see them now, the ones it took. Faces in the waves. They scream without sound. April 13th. I tried turning off the light. It turned back on. It wants them to come. It's not a beacon. It's bait. The next page was torn. The last entry unfinished. That morning, I found wet footprints near the base of the tower, leading from the front door to the spiral stairs. But no one else was here. The temperature inside had dropped. I could hear whispering, though the air was still. That night, I saw it. The sea split. Not literally, but visually. The light from the tower hit something, and it answered. A shape rose from the water, tall, shifting, barely formed. Limbs or tendrils or wings. It wasn't clear. Kelp and barnacle crowned a head with too many eyes. The melody became clearer. It was singing back to the lighthouse. I couldn't move. My body wanted to step into the light, to walk out to the cliff's edge and leap. The only thing that stopped me was the camera's shutter clicking behind me. That human sound. That snap of reality. By the third night, I couldn't think of anything but the light. The melody played constantly now, even when I covered my ears. I found one last hidden page in the diary, behind a loose wall plank. The sea must feed. I tried to leave. It wouldn't let me. I smashed the bulb. It reformed. If you're reading this, you're next. I ran to the light chamber. The beam was on. The controls didn't work. I yanked the power lines. The machine sparked, then hummed back to life. I grabbed my tripod, swung it at the bulb. Glass shattered everywhere. For one blessed second, the light died. Then it melted back together, like mercury, like living glass. The beam shot out again. The creature answered. I don't remember returning to the stairs, only the feel of sea mist on my face and the sound of the lens turning behind me. Now I sit at the desk, the same place Thomas McClay sat. My camera still records on the ledge outside, capturing a time-lapse of the sea. But I don't think I'll retrieve it. The melody is so beautiful now. It knows my name. The light is no longer just a light. It's me, and I must keep it burning. The sea remembers, and it is hungry. I came to the Alps for silence, but not like this. They took my phone at the front desk, not stolen, just gently slipped away under the guise of deep detox. I was handed a wool key fob, a map of the resort, and a white card with elegant black lettering. For your comfort and safety, we kindly ask that all guests maintain silence. Speaking aloud outside your room is discouraged. Whisper if necessary. The receptionist smiled but said nothing. No one did. Only a gentle bow and the quiet hum of wind through the ancient pines beyond the frost-covered windows. I assumed it was gimmicky, like those yoga retreats where silence is meant to heal the spirit. I was wrong. The resort was beautiful. Sleek glass merged into timber and stone, built into the mountain like a secret. Snow fell constantly, thick and muffling. Even footsteps sounded like whispers, but it was the unnatural quiet that unsettled me. At night, I swore I heard things. Footsteps in the halls where no one walked, and faint. Whispers drifting through the wind outside. Not voices I could understand, but fragmented syllables, stretched and trembling. On my second night, I heard someone speak. A man's voice, quick, nervous. A single sentence in the hallway. Screw this silent crap. Then a scream, cut short. I opened the door. No one was there. In the morning, the man was gone. At breakfast, guests picked at their food in silence. I tried asking the waiter about the incident by writing it on a napkin. He read it, folded the napkin, slipped it into his pocket, then walked away. Later that afternoon, I met a couple, Anna and Lucas, whispering to each other behind the sauna. When they noticed me, they beckoned urgently. Lucas leaned in. "Don't speak outside," he whispered, breath-forming clouds. "People vanish." I laughed, then realized neither of them did. Anna's hands trembled. "Our friend Marcus." He laughed outside the forest trail, loudly. "He didn't come back." "What do you mean?" I whispered. "There are things in the woods," Lucas said. "Old things. The staff call them Stimmenwesen, spirits that feed on voices. That night, they invited me to dinner in their suite. The only safe place to talk, they said. We drank wine, whispered nervously. For the first time in days, I felt normal. Then Lucas got too drunk. He told a joke, something dumb about the spa, and laughed out loud. The room fell deathly cold. The lights flickered. Anna went pale. "Turn off the lights." Too late. A knock at the door. We froze. Lucas opened it slowly. Nothing there, except footprints. In the snow. Human. Bare. Leading away from the door into the hall, and vanishing after a few steps. By morning, Lucas was gone. No one remembered him. Not even Anna. Not completely. I think I was traveling alone," she said, confused. "Why did I—" She sobbed once, loudly, and ran outside. That night she didn't return. Her room was cleared by morning, quietly, like it had never been touched. I needed answers. I searched the lowest levels of the resort, beneath the spa, past locked doors. One opened into an old archive, dusty, smelled like rot and damp paper. Guest logs going back to 1924. Pages missing. Names crossed out. I found a tattered journal wedged behind a pipe. It belonged to a former manager. One passage was underlined. "They were never meant to be here. We built on cursed land. Silence keeps them sleeping. The bell held them before. It rang every dawn. Now we call it tranquility." A map showed carvings deep in the forest. Ritual symbols. Boundaries. There was a phrase scratched over and over. "Voices wake the woods." I tried to leave. No gondola came. No staff responded. I walked down the icy path, but the woods turned me around. Trees shifted. Trails vanished. The snow whispered in voices I recognized. Anna's, Lucas's, even my own. "The forest keeps what it hears," a voice said. Then I slipped. Sharp pain in my ankle. I screamed. A mistake. The wind stopped. The forest listened. Snow began to twitch. Figures emerged. Not men. Twisted limbs, faces like hollow masks, mouths stretched wide like they were born to consume song. They mimicked me. My scream echoed back, distorted, hungry. I ran, through the trees, through the pain, until the resort door appeared like salvation. I collapsed across the threshold, breath steaming in sobs I dared not voice. The doorman lifted me wordlessly, nodded, helped me inside. I've been here 3 days since. Another guest disappeared this morning. The staff removed his things while everyone ate in silence. I haven't spoken since the woods. I don't know what happens if I do, but I don't want to find out. They said the building was over 200 years old. Gold-gilded edges, deep burgundy wallpaper, and chandeliers that trembled when no one was near. The kind of place where time doesn't just slow, it lurks. I booked it because I liked the idea of staying somewhere with a story. Prague in the winter is hauntingly beautiful. I was traveling alone, something I'd grown to enjoy, and this old hotel, the Grand Astoria, promised charm and quiet. At the reception, the man behind the desk barely looked up. Name? Claire Hartley. He nodded, fingers tapping a worn ledger. No computer system. Room 413. The bellhop who took my bag glanced at the number, then paused. 413? He asked the clerk. The man gave him a sharp look. Yes. We rode the lift in silence. As the doors opened on the 4th floor, the bellhop's voice dropped low. Try not to leave mirrors uncovered at night. I blinked. Excuse me? But he was already gone. The hallway stretched longer than it should have. Room 413 was at the very end, slightly colder than the rest. The key turned with effort. The room was beautiful. Velvet curtains, high windows, antique furniture. A tall mirror stood facing the bed. It looked older than the hotel itself, its frame carved with strange symbols that seemed to shimmer faintly. I took a deep breath. The air felt thick. When I looked at myself in the mirror, my reflection stared back. But something was wrong. It blinked a split second too late. Later that evening, I checked the time, 9:12 p.m. Then I checked my phone, 1:47 a.m. The wall clock ticked normally. My watch ran backward for a moment, then righted itself. Whispers came through the vent above the bed. At first, I thought it was voices from another room. Then I remembered the bellhop's face, the way he whispered that line. I covered the mirror with a towel. I tried to sleep. Dreams came hard and vivid. A woman stood in front of the mirror, brushing her hair slowly. Her face was mine, but older, smiling, but not kindly. She turned slightly and said something I couldn't hear. I woke with a gasp and saw a figure in the reflection, standing behind me. I turned. No one. I pulled the towel off the mirror and stared. My reflection looked back, but her expression didn't match mine. In the morning, I packed my things. I wanted to leave. At the reception, a different woman stood behind the desk. Checking out? She asked. Yes. Something's not right. May I have your passport? I reached for it. Gone. She tilted her head and pulled a small envelope from a drawer. This was left in your room. It was a passport. I opened it. Same face, same photo, different name. Elena Markova, Czech, born 1983. That wasn't me. I looked up. This isn't mine. The receptionist frowned. That's the only document registered to your room. She tapped the screen. Room 413, Miss Markova. Number, I'm Claire Hartley. I checked in yesterday. There is no room 413, she said gently. I felt the blood leave my face. I ran upstairs. Floor 4. The hallway ended at room 411, a solid wall where 413 had been. I touched the wallpaper. Knocked. Hollow. A door should be there. Panicked, I wandered until I found a narrow wooden door marked Service. It creaked open. Behind it, stairs. Dusty. Unused. I followed them down. Below the hotel was something ancient. A room lit by oil lamps. The air was dry and hot, filled with a strange incense. The walls were covered in portraits, hundreds. Some drawn, some painted, some photographs. All women. All slightly different versions of the same few faces. Mine among them. Tables held old passports, names scratched out. On one, Claire Hartley. My photo, burned at the edge. A mirror hung on the far wall. In it, I saw myself. But this time, she smiled first. Behind me, I heard chanting. Figures in robes appeared from the shadows. We wondered when you'd come back, one said. Room 413 accepts only the ready. I want my life back, I said, my voice shaking. Another chuckled. That life is gone. You traded it the moment you stepped through that door. I didn't ask to, but you did enter. I backed toward the mirror. It shimmered now. No reflection, just a swirl of dark silver. A hooded woman stepped forward. The world forgets those who are unclaimed. We offer you a new place, a purpose. It's peaceful, really. I screamed. No sound came out. only silence. I tried to smash the mirror. The frame rang like a bell, unbroken. I turned, ready to run, but the room was gone. Only the hallway. And my reflection, Elena's, stood waiting. She raised a hand and waved. I blinked and smiled. They gave me a new key. I sleep in room 413 now. The mirror no longer frightens me. Sometimes I hear someone screaming from behind the glass. It sounds familiar, but that isn't my name anymore. My name was, I don't remember, but I live here now, in room 413.